Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Conversations with Agape. In this month's webisode, we are excited to have Carl as our guest speaker. He will be sharing insights on how to advance the marriage movement in America. Carl, thank you for being with us today. I will turn my camera off for now, and till the end of the session, I'll turn it back on. But again, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Ashley. It is such a wonderful opportunity and joy to be with you all. Thank you so much for letting me speak to your amazing audience. And thank you for the incredible work that you do to advance the gospel across the country in this incredible format. So we're talking about marriage today, and I have to begin just by talking about how much I love marriage. I love the institution of marriage. I love how God created the heavens and the earth, and he goes right into creating his first institution, which is marriage, and how he did such a marvelous job of that. The institution of marriage is such an amazing thing. Marriage is the most a significant commitment we make to another person in this life. And as Tim Keller says, outside of our relationship with God, marriage is the most profound relationship there is. I love the institution of marriage. I also love this idea of serving marriages. Serving marriages is so unique because as a Christian or a Catholic couple who's growing in your faith, marriage ministry is something that you can do together as a couple. It's something that brings you together. So often in our parishes, in our churches, we're pulled in different directions, right? One of us might be pulled towards men's ministry, another towards youth ministry or women's ministry, but marriage ministry pulls us together. And something that's so unique about marriage ministry or serving marriages is that the longer that you serve marriages, the longer that you're married, the more qualified you become. It's amazing how I know of couples who are in their 70s or early 80s, and people love being mentored by them and served by them in their marriages. Serving marriages is something that you definitely become more and more qualified to do. You don't age out of marriage ministry. So I say that I love the institution of marriage. I love serving marriages, but more than anything, I love being married. My wife Kelly and I were high school sweethearts, and we had a really interesting beginning. We met as juniors in high school, and we instantly fell into an incredible friendship, and that a really strong friendship that continued through our high school and college years. We were married in 1983, so we've been married 41 years now. And what's so beautiful about marriage is that if you continue to be intentional about growing towards one another, what's so amazing about that is marriage just becomes richer and richer with each phase of life. You know, you get married and you're in that early season and you're doing all these fun adventures together. And then kids come along and it changes the nature of marriage, but it gives you something really important to focus on together. It's your mission together as the leaders of the family. Marriage is more than a romantic notion. Marriage is the family leadership team. It's the central bond of every family. And during that season of raising kids together, you come together to partner on this amazing journey of raising up that next generation. You know, I love to say that children are a voice that you send to a time that you'll never see. This is all about advancing the gospel of Jesus Christ generationally. And what an amazing and profound opportunity it is as a couple to come together to raise up that next generation. But then comes the empty nest. And I want to remind people there is nothing empty about the empty nest. If you've been together as a couple and working together and on the same page, the empty nest, I think for us has been really the sweetest season of our marriage. And Kelly and I both share a lot of common interests. We still share that amazing friendship. We just got back from going to the Canadian Rocky Mountains outside of the Banff National Park, just west of Calgary. And we hiked 117 miles together over 9 days. We just actually finished hiking segment hikes of the Appalachian Trail in all 14 states, from Georgia to Maine. That was something that we did over 5 to 10 years, a really fun adventure to do that together. And so the empty nest, there's nothing empty about it. It's a rich, rich season. And so it's marriage is just such a beautiful thing. But there's challenges in marriages, right? And Kelly and I have a really unique story in that um, our story goes back to April of 1972. And I want to frame up the picture of what this looks like. In April of 1972, in the 118th Judicial District Court of Howard County, Texas, on that morning, there was a custody battle that was in progress. And throughout that day, through the acrimony and the testimony of that custody battle, the judge decided that neither parent was ideal for custody. And so about lunchtime, the judge calls a recess. He asks the two kids to come back privately into his judge's chamber. The judge remembers this little girl of 11 years old and sitting across from him in this chair, a petite little girl with blonde curly hair, her feet not quite touching the ground, and her brother, who was 3 years older. And he simply asked the kids who they wanted to live with. And the little girl spoke up and said she wanted to live with her mom. What's so interesting about that court case was that little girl was the little girl that became my wife. And the judge in that case was my dad. And I can tell you that on that day where that custody battle happened, um, both of our families were struggling. My dad was a district judge, as I said, and he was in the middle of what was the great unraveling of marriages in our country, the what was called no-fault divorce, which was signed. The first no-fault divorce was signed in 1969 by a California governor named Ronald Reagan. That surprises people. And after he passed that legislation, no-fault divorce spread across our country. My dad was operating what he called the divorce mill, as he was overseeing an overwhelming number of divorce cases. And the emotional impact of seeing all those families break, the emotional impact of seeing those kids struggle, impacted my dad severely. And his coping mechanism was alcohol. And so our family had its own struggle, and that was a struggle with alcoholism and the secrecy of having an alcoholic father who was a district judge and a prominent person in the community. So our family has a really unique beginning place. But if you just fast forward to just a few years later in 1983, there we are again, all together. The judge is my best man, and the defendant in the case is walking the bride down the aisle. So to say that every family has unique challenges around families of origin, we can certainly say that we understand that. And to just think that God would choose to allow us to be a part of coming alongside couples in our own home during the 1980s, to begin publishing websites when the internet became a thing, and helping people find resources, to the year 2009, when we first started our first community-based initiative in San Antonio, to today, where San Antonio is the most marriage resource city in the country. That has been quite a work of redemption and restoration, and only God could do something of that nature. Is that right? God has not given up on marriage, and he's not sitting on the throne in heaven, wringing his hands, wondering if Carl is going to get up and be a part of the redemptive work. No, God is moving. And what we say that we like to believe about this, our fundamental statement of belief in the marriage initiative is to say that we believe God desires to redeem and restore marriages in our cities and across our country by his power and for his glory. And the reason why I love that statement is because it's all about God and it's nothing about us. God is such a wonderful Heavenly Father, and as any loving father would do, he invites us into the work that he's doing. He allows us to be a part of what he's doing as a good father. And our job is just to be faithful each day to see what the Father is doing and how we can be a part of that. And that's what has become the marriage initiative. We are at a really exciting moment in the history of our country as it relates to marriage. We've been through a really dark season with the challenges that marriages faced in the 1960s, when fault-based divorce was creating all sorts of challenges for families, with no-fault divorce, with the change of identity of what marriage is, and the Supreme Court decision in 2015 that redefined marriage. Marriage has been through a really difficult season, but I really believe, and I see evidences of this, that the winds have shifted. What seemed to be a generation long headwind that we were fighting, that we were trying to sail into, that headwind has shifted and is now becoming a tailwind. And why do I say that? I say that because COVID was a powerful and profound cultural reset. COVID was unprecedented in modern times. And when you think about what happened during COVID and the crazy things that surrounded that, COVID was a time when people slowed down and began to reassess what was most important in their life. That was the cultural trend that emerged from COVID, is that people wanted to reassess what was most important in their life. The second thing that COVID did is it kind of forced our hand on marriage. And why do I say that? Because during COVID, one of the things that couples told us is something like this. They might say, we've been married for 15 years and we've never done anything to grow in our marriage. We've never taken anything to learn how to communicate. We've never done anything to learn how to handle conflict. And all of a sudden, all we're doing is trying to communicate and handle conflict. And it woke up a generation of people who've been coasting in their marriage. I say that coasting is because people took their marriage for granted. They just assumed, that it would take care of itself. But we know that that's not how things work. We know that we have to be preventive in our health, right? We have to take good care of our health. We have to eat right, and we have to exercise. We have to invest in our bodies, and we have to invest in our minds. We know that even the cars we drive, if you never change the oil in your car, what would happen to it? The engine would blow. The car would no longer function. We know that in other areas of our life. But for some reason, for so many years, we were just coasting in our marriage, never doing anything preventive. There's a funny saying that says the grass is greener if you water it. And all of a sudden, couples were trying to realize why they were struggling so mightily in their marriage. And it's because people simply had not been investing in their marriage. And this cultural reset that happened caused us to begin to ask ourselves, what are we doing to invest in our marriage? Why are we not investing in our marriage? And it created an incredible new sense of demand for marriage resources, for books on marriage, for marriage events. And all these incredible events like Marriage Encounter and Retrovi and Beyond Cana, and all these incredible marriage events for couples, or a Weekend to Remember, or many Art of Marriage, all these incredible resources. People began to engage. And through the engagement of couples becoming more intentional about their marriage, what we found was that divorces have been falling. In fact, in San Antonio, in our own hometown, last year in 2023, our divorce rate fell by 8.5%. It has never fallen by that amount since we've been recording divorce statistics. Usually, an ordinary number it might fall by 0.5% or 1%, or a really banner year, it might fall by 2%. But in 2023, divorce fell by 8.5%. What I'm telling you today, friends, is the winds have shifted. The winds have shifted. And there is a new emerging marriage renaissance that is happening. People will say, what? A marriage renaissance? Yes. I'm seeing the evidences of an emerging marriage renaissance that's happening around the country. People are investing in their marriage. People are valuing their marriage. People are growing in their marriage. There's greater demand for marriage resources and marriage help. More people, it's being normalized that people are reaching out for help in their marriage. More couples are very open that they're going to see a counselor. Why? Because they want to invest in their marriage. Great things are happening around marriage. Marriage is seeing a renaissance of sorts. We're seeing the very beginning glimmers of light of that. Now, if you think that's not happening, it might be because you're reading the headlines of the elite writers, like maybe the New York Times or maybe some of these elite publications that represent a different worldview. But if you look at the research, what you find is that marriage is rising. The importance and value of marriage is rising among many demographics all across the country. Our friend Dr. Brad Wilcox, a devout man of faith and a great Catholic brother, has just written a book called Get Married. And in his book, he highlights all the most recent research on what's happening around marriage, and that the happiest people, the happiest people in America are married people. It's really some brilliant findings that he uh, uh, wraps up into his book, Get Married. I really highly suggest it. If you get the book, you will realize that the tide has turned. And so it's time to celebrate marriage. When do we celebrate marriage? We celebrate marriage every year during National Marriage Week. And what is National Marriage Week? National Marriage Week is the 7 days leading up to Valentine's Day. That's the cultural moment of the year where we celebrate our closest romantic, loving relationships, obviously, or friendships. And so National Marriage Week happens every year from February 7th through 14th. And the theme of National Marriage Week this year is called Pursuing a Lasting Love. Well, how do we pick a theme? Well, we always go to the cultural moment. And the cultural moment right now is that people really want to be married, but they're concerned. They've seen the statistics, and some of those statistics are not accurate, but they've seen statistics, and they're concerned about entering into marriage. They're concerned that their marriage would last. And so people are approaching marriage very cautiously, very sober-mindedly, but people are pursuing a lasting love. And so we've made that our theme this year, is pursuing a lasting love. And we're partnering with U.S. Council of Catholic Bishops and other organizations all around the country to unify our theme around what's so important about marriage. And that is that based on the research by Dr. Judith Wallerstein, she wrote a book called The Good Marriage, How and Why Marriage Lasts. And there's 9 things that couples need to make it through to have a lasting marriage. And so we're focusing our content this year on those themes. And we're also during National Marriage Week, each of the 8 days, there's actually 8 days from February 7th through 14th. Each of those 8 days, we're featuring a live stream where each night we're going to feature 3 different authors and speakers who are going to talk about those different elements that you might walk through in your marriage. And I'm going to talk through what some of those might be. So on February 7th, we're going to talk about family roots, how families of origin impacts your marriage. The next day, we're going to talk about building togetherness, honoring individuality. On Sunday, February 9th, what's it like to become parents as a married couple? Kids change your marriage, they change your life, and all in a very good way. The next day, we're going to talk about coping with crisis and adversity. Every couple faces that. Then we're going to talk about making a safe place for conflict. Some amazing panelists on this day, Dr. Brad Rhodes, Dr. Sharon May, Troy and Kathleen Billings, some great folks. Every day we're going to highlight 3 national authors and speakers. That day we're going to be talking about making a safe place for conflict. On the 12th, we're going to talk about intimacy in marriage, not just physical intimacy, but emotional and spiritual intimacy. On the 13th, we're going to talk about keeping the fun alive in marriage. And then finally, we're going to talk about nurturing emotions and romance. And that's what National Marriage Week is going to look like this year. It's the week that we celebrate marriage and the beautiful thing that God has brought us through marriage. So a lot of times people ask us for advice. What creates a great marriage? And so we don't give a lot of its specific advice for marriage, but we we love to share some basic principles. And one of the things that we say that every good marriage should do is that every good marriage should connect daily, should date weekly, and should get away regularly. What do we mean by that? In every marriage, we need to connect daily. We need to find a time during our day where we reconnect as a couple and get on the same page and share the highs and lows of our days and talk about how we can pray for each other and celebrate each other. We need just to find a period of time each day where we have some quiet, we can focus on each other, and we can connect every day. We also need to date weekly, finding a time to be intentional every week, just to do even just something simple that you can do together as a couple. What is it that you like to do together? Find a time each week just to go out on a date. When you keep your dating life active throughout your married life, you always nurture romance. And for Kelly and I, we when our kids were little bitty, every Friday night we would spread a little picnic table out on the carpet in front of the TV, and we'd serve pizza, and we have what we call family fun night. Well, what's funny is that our grandson now 30 plus, 33 years later, is visiting us this week. And on Friday night this week, we spread out the picnic blanket on the carpet, and we had our family fun night. So no matter whether kids or grandkids are with us, no matter what, Kelly and I, we have a date every Friday night that involves pizza. Now, you can't go wrong with that, right? And then finally, you need to get away regularly. Find some time each year where you get away to really go deeper as a couple. And maybe you might go to a conference, you might invest in your marriage somehow, or for like Kelly and I, we love to go hiking together. As I mentioned, when we were in the Canadian Rockies, we hiked 117 miles over 9 days. And that was a lot of time just to talk and connect as a couple and just really bond that connection together. So we're excited about marriage. We think there's a fresh wind that is blowing. We believe God is moving powerfully to redeem and restore marriages. And we're so excited just to be with you all today and just share the good news of what we're seeing. And so, Ashley, thank you so much for allowing us to visit today, and for me to share these great things that are on my heart and mind. And thank you for letting me connect with your audience.
Well, and thank you so much for sharing your incredible testimony. That was incredibly moving, you and your wife's story. So thank you for being open and sharing that with us. And it sounds like an incredible lineup that you have for National Marriage Week. So I'm really looking forward to that. How can people find that? Is it on your website? What can you provide us with more information?
Absolutely. Marriageweek.org. Marriageweek.org. And we also have a brand new website that features resources, and you could probably guess what that is, marriageresources.org. So either website will either give you resources that you can find or more information about National Marriage Week.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Carl. And I hope you and your wife will be able to go on many more hikes. I am incredibly impressed by your 117-mile hike, being a Colorado native here. So when you said that, it made my mouth drop of like, oh my goodness, that's quite the hike. So I look forward to hearing more stories and National Marriage Week. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Great to meet you. Thank you so much.